Hi, just take a seat. Right, so how can I help you today? Yep, no, I totally understand. No, it's absolutely fine. Seriously, we hear everything. As doctors, we hear absolutely everything, so just be completely honest about your symptoms, and that way we'll be able to help you in the best way possible. I'm just going to make a couple of notes. And how long did you say you've been experiencing the symptoms for? And has there been any family history of similar things? Okay. And is it mostly constipation or diarrhea that you're suffering from at the moment? Because I noticed you said that you sometimes deal with both. Okay, right. No, it's fine. No, seriously, we hear everything here. It's fine because we want to know the details, otherwise we won't get to the root cause. I'm also going to just do a quick manual backup here in your notes file as well, just because we have had some technical difficulties with our system this week. So, yes, here. Yeah. Okay, so you said that there has been certain family members that have dealt with similar things. That leads me to think perhaps there is some sort of a genetic link with what you're facing. But of course we don't know the exact condition. I'm just the GP. But we do need to make some initial tests and run some initial studies just to make sure that your blood levels are fine and that there's no inflammation in your body at the moment, because there's certain diseases which can cause these symptoms which are more serious than some of the more common ones, but it's always best practice that we rule out those conditions so we can make sure that we are diagnosing you correctly. So I'm going to schedule you in for a routine blood test. And do you have any preferred days? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That is scheduled in now, and you'll get an email as well because we have you registered on the system to confirm that appointment. We will also need a stool sample. Have you ever done one of them before? No. Right, okay. That's slightly different. But yeah, no, it's fine. There's instructions. I will print you off the details, and you'll just collect the tube at reception for the sample. You need to make sure that you do provide a hefty sample for us to analyse things correctly. So, yeah, I'll just write that down. Yeah. Yeah, that was what I was going to do. Just need a few more questions. Just need to write down exactly what you've experienced in more detail, just so I can raise any red flags to the gastroenterology team, because I'm going to refer you there anyway, because you did mention the urgency and you did mention certain red flag symptoms that I would like to escalate with the team. So typically it's usually, there's two conditions which I am thinking potentially you may have. So the first is IBS and the second is potentially inflammatory bowel. These two conditions, they're fairly similar, and under the inflammatory bowel there are two other conditions. There's Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. But there's certain symptoms such as the urgency that you listed, which made me feel like it was a red flag, and not to worry you, but I will, because that's our job. We need to raise it with the correct team, because we don't want to miss anything. Yeah. Yeah, so I will refer you on there, and we'll get those blood tests scheduled in. But for now, we are going to treat it as an IBS diagnosis, at least for the next month until we have further tests back. Typically with IBS, we'd like to recommend lifestyle changes. So I'm not sure if you've heard about the FODMAPs. FODMAPs are certain undigestible fibres within foods, and these can trigger the symptoms of IBS in certain individuals that are prone to the symptoms. So typically things like onions, they're high in FODMAPs, and there's a whole list of potential irritants. So what I'll do is I'll print you them off, and you can also collect them at reception too. Okay, right. Yes, so that will be there to collect with the stool sample, and yeah, if you just make sure that you get those samples offered to us as soon as possible, and you avoid FODMAPs for at least 2 to 3 weeks, just to see if your symptoms subside. And even if it is something slightly more serious, which we're hoping it isn't at this moment, but there are some red flags that you raised, then FODMAPs can be eliminated, and that won't harm any other condition or make any symptoms worse, basically. Healthy people can remove FODMAPs, and people that have chronic illnesses can remove them without any consequence usually. Sometimes there's been some concern from some of my patients about reducing the fibre in their diet from reducing the FODMAPs, because FODMAPs are indigestible fibres, and there's plenty of other fibre sources which don't ferment as much in the gut. So I would typically recommend psyllium husk, and you can get this over the counter. It's not something we prescribe, unfortunately, so you will have to do your own research into the most effective supplement for you. I would recommend you have a look on Amazon. I'll write that down in the notes, so next time we can have a catch up, and and next time we can have a catch up and we can discuss if that's helped. So yeah, and I know it's difficult, and I know that there's several symptoms which can be embarrassing, but I do think there's a good way forward for us if we get the correct diagnosis, and you just follow the steps involved, and everything should be fine. Do you have any more questions? Yeah. Not personally, but I do have family members who have IBS and other bowel conditions, and yeah, at times it can be embarrassing, but if you can effectively manage the symptoms, and just remember, we're all human, there's no shame in any of our conditions. You might be able to see my skin at the moment. I'm dealing with acne, and I'm a doctor myself, and I've got a skin condition. It's crazy, but it happens, and this is just life. It's unpredictable. Things aren't as clear-cut as we expect them to be in life. Life throws us hurdles, and there's absolutely nothing to be embarrassed about. If you just raise those issues with your co-workers, I'm sure they'll be able to find necessary toiletry adjustments for you, and you'll be able to progress forward in a more efficient manner whilst you're at work. And what I will do is I'll write you a note here, just in case you do need to take time off of work. I'll write you a sick note. Actually, it's probably best I do that on the computer, and this will get emailed to you. So yeah, if there is any points in the near future, in the next few weeks, that you do feel like you need to take time out of work, I understand that your symptoms are quite severe at the moment, and I think it warrants this sick note. So if you just hand that to your employer, it's all processed now and verified. So yeah, that hopefully should put your mind at ease, because stress can aggravate things. it can really inflame things further if there is inflammation. And even if there isn't any inflammation present and it is just IBS, then still it can trigger things because your body goes into fight or flight mode, which then leads to the digestive process speeding up, and that can create the symptoms that you are having at the moment. So yeah, I'm hoping that today was it was helpful. And just remember, there's absolutely no shame in coming to the doctors. It's a place that we all visit from time to time, and we need to actively help your symptoms and improve your quality of life, because it's not fair you've been dealing with this for the past few weeks and not being able to get much help. So yeah, is there any last questions or concerns that you have? We've got, how long do we have? I think we can squeeze maybe another 5-10 minutes in because we had a cancellation. So yeah, unfortunately these things happen and then we can't fill the last slot. So I mean, if there are any other points that I can help you with, I'd be happy, so long as it is around IBS. Otherwise you will have to book in a separate appointment. But yeah, and any other questions? Yeah, that's a good point. There are tests online for food intolerances. Personally, we don't recommend that here at the NHS because there is a lack of science around their validity. That's the main point. Unfortunately, these tests online, they're not reliable and can often give false positives, and the actual form of testing isn't something that we would recommend here at the NHS because there is that lack of science and data. I will write that in your notes though, because there is another test that we can do. It's not necessarily a food test where we'll go through all of the allergens, but actually it probably is, yeah, it's a good idea that we probably do that now if you have experienced more of these symptoms after eating certain foods such as wheat, because there is a condition, I'm not sure if you've heard about it, celiac disease. Celiac disease is an autoimmune condition where your body attacks basically your small intestine when you are exposed to gluten, and gluten containing foods such as barley and wheat and that sort of food, so cereals and other grain products such as bread, and that can sometimes manifest with similar symptoms. I will test for that actually. It's a good idea. And I'll just write that down here as well. Apologies. Okay, right. So we've got you booked in for that test. That is a blood test as well. It'll be on the same day as your routine blood test, just to make sure that everything's okay. And that will then, the results are slightly, they take a slightly longer time to process than the routine blood test, because it is quite a specialised test. So if you just wait maybe a couple of weeks and then just ring the clinic if we've not rung you. But hopefully everything will be fine on that front as well. I am thinking from your symptoms it's possibly IBS or inflammatory bowel, but I'm not the specialist in gastroenterology, so that's why I have referred you. But like you've mentioned, looking online is helpful, but just keep in mind there are certain tests which aren't 100% valid and there's not data behind them, and here we only recommend things which are proven and that we know work for our patients. So I wouldn't recommend spending money on any private testing which isn't something that we would already offer on the NHS. So yeah, I guess we've got 5 minutes. Is there any other questions we could fit in? Yeah, I get you. Yeah, urgency is certainly a symptom which isn't to be laughed at, even though we can find ourselves chuckling along in these situations. I would, yeah, for urgency problems. No, yeah, of course, yes, I understand. No, we do have something actually which we can prescribe, and it helps around 80 to 90% of our patients, so it does have a good success rate. However, it's not something we typically recommend long term because it can mask the symptoms rather than trying to treat the root cause. So we want to make sure that we're avoiding the FODMAPs to avoid the urgency to begin with. But I will prescribe you, it's Imodium. You can buy it over the counter as well, but the tablets I'm going to prescribe today, they're slightly stronger and they work slightly faster. So if you are in any tricky situations, you can just take one and then within 10 to 15 minutes you'll feel some relief. Yeah, so I'll prescribe them on the computer. Yeah. Okay, so that's everything there, and at this stage I think that's all we can do. We've tested, well, we're going to test, sorry, for your celiac disease markers. We're going to test for just your typical red and white blood cell count just to make sure there's no infections. And we're going to refer you to the gastroenterologist to make sure that those symptoms of urgency are not something of a disease which is slightly more serious. But I am hoping at this stage is just IBS and we can manage it with dietary modifications. So yeah, if you just collect the stool sample and the leaflets and the information that I have sent through to the desk, the office, you can collect them, and yeah, we'll see you back here. I'll schedule in your next appointment actually right now, because your tests, given that you turn up to the blood tests on time, you can be booked in, I'm going to say 5 weeks time. I'm sorry, yeah, no, it's not great. We did used to have more urgent availability, but you know, with everything that's gone on in the UK recently politically, there's been such a toll on the NHS resources. We are very overworked. I don't want to bring that into the appointment, but I hope you do understand. I like to say that to all of our patients, because otherwise it can be disappointing. But I do want to reassure you, your health is of the utmost importance to us here, and I want to ensure that we get you the correct diagnosis and that you are able to effectively manage your symptoms moving forward. Not only will this improve your quality of life, but the weight issues that you've been facing as well may subside. So yeah, thank you for listening and being willing to take these changes into your life with a positive mindset. And if there are any more severe changes or things which are life-threatening, such as blood in the stool or absolute severe cramps which are not able to be shifted with over-the-counter pain medication, please do book in for a secondary consultation. Or actually, it might even be best to ring 111, provided the symptoms are strong and they are not shifting and they're persistent. Please do book in and call 111 for an emergency appointment. But if they do subside, but they are them symptoms that I've listed, do book in again. It won't be with myself, as I said, it's a 5-week waiting time, but we do have more urgent availability with some of our other clinicians here. So yeah, thank you for booking in, and I will see you in 5 weeks, and I hope there isn't anything further which will cause distress, and I hope that these prescribed medicines and the dietary changes will help. And thank you again for coming, and yeah, I hope you have a nice rest of your day, and I will see you in 5 weeks. Bye.